Yes. Fucking yes! I was just reminded of that song recently. I was playing at the Horse over the weekend. I also played at Wayward over the weekend. Friday night. Good weekend. I love, obviously playing in Fed is always a blast, and playing in Fells is always a blast. And somebody requested Float On by Modest Mouse. And it occurred to me that this might, as you guys know, I tend to lean slightly in favor of the original versions of songs. It's the hipster in me. I try not to be a hipster about too many things, but that's one of them. Like I heard some complete, there's been a couple mixes of that song. We don't have to take our clothes off. There was like a couple years ago, there was a version of that came out. And then today in the gym, I heard a different version. And all I could think was, there's probably so many people walking around right now that have no idea of the original 1980s Jermaine Stewart version of this song, which I genuinely think is better. But this song by Lupe Fiasco might very well be my favorite kind of version of this song. I like the Modest Mouse version. I know that this is a remix of the Modest Mouse version, but I gotta be honest. Something about this song. All right, already the show goes on all night till the morning with dreams so long. Like the rap versus rock. The message is it's a different message. The message in Float On is like, whatever, dude. Shit happens, and sometimes it's okay. I bumped my car into a cop car the other day. Well, we just sold out there that it's all okay. It's like, all right, yeah, stuff happens, shit happens, and sometimes it just doesn't matter. Sometimes shit's just good. The show goes on is like, nah, bruh. We're not just talking about shit happening. We're talking about you gonna fucking make it, baby. The show goes on. I don't care what the fuck happens to you. Till the morning, we dream so long. I'm locked in. I'm locked in, baby. My name is Jimmy Selesky. I'm feeling positive today. I woke up in a real kind of negative mood. And I think that has a lot to do with the fact that the tail end of my weeks, as I mentioned on the Friday show, which was overwhelmingly negative, some might argue. That's normally the part of the week where I kind of fall back into my old habits of drinking and smoking cigarettes, and of course on the weekends I'm not doing the shows, so I'm sleeping in. And playing gigs and just kind of back in that scene, whereas the Mondays and Monday through Wednesday, I'm like, I'm right here, baby. And so I all weekend, I just been feeling just down in the dumps a little bit. And I woke up this morning with this very, I don't want to say disturbing dream, but just kind of relatable dream. I know. Can you believe it that my own subconscious conjured up a dream for me that related to me? I mean, what are the odds? But there was just so many people in it from my life that there was too many to name. And I just had this feeling of just kind of being isolated from all of them. Like everybody was kind of doing their own thing. It's hard to describe. Dreams are more memorable to me in terms of how they make you feel. Much like people, much like the just girly things quote for any of you fans of Facebook, 2011 Facebook. people don't remember what you said. They remember how you made them feel. That's dreams. Unless I actually make a point to write them down, which I did for a little bit and I kind of stopped that. I don't know exactly what happened in the dreams, but I remember how they felt. And the feeling I woke up with this morning was this immense feeling of loneliness. And, you can read into the interpretation of dreams in a lot of different ways. Some people believe that they could actually be so much as like premonitions for the future, while others simply subscribe to the idea that your dreams are kind of just telling you what's going on behind the curtain of your subconscious. Now, I think that is obvious. I think that, your dreams are your subconscious just kind of taking over, like playing you a fucking movie. And they are more often than not, I would say probably almost always, rooted in some thought process or issue or whatever is plaguing you at the time. Now, I've gone on the record before and said, I don't really have happy dreams. I don't remember the last time I had a happy dream. My dreams are almost always stressful. They're almost always melancholic. I don't know. Maybe that says something about my subconscious. But I think that the people that say or suggest that dreams could be more than just a depiction of your subconscious, that they could actually be telling of the future, well, I think there's actually some weight to that. And not necessarily because I believe in seeing into the future psychically or something like that. I don't necessarily not believe in that. I'm not going to rule it out. But if you ask me right now and put a gun to my head, I would say, probably not. I don't know. I genuinely don't know. I might be more 50-50 on that than even I think. However, much like that movie Limitless, if anybody's familiar with the movie Limitless, for those of you who are not, it was a movie, I believe, starring Bradley Cooper or somebody like that. I forgot who. Good movie. It's about this guy who gains access to this pill that basically like opens up. They say like you only use like 10% of your brain consciously. And so this pill allows you to like access 80% of it or 90%. So this guy becomes like 8 times smarter than the average person by just taking this pill every day. And then by doing so, he's able to just like fucking run Wall Street, make all kinds of money, seduce chicks, be the coolest guy ever, take over the fucking world essentially. But among that, he's also pretty much able to just kind of like almost see the future. Not really see the future, but there's a scene towards the end of the movie where like there's a guy loading out some things from a delivery truck, and there's another guy driving in like a Corvette on his phone, and there's another person biking across the street. And before this entire sequence of events takes place, he's able to just look at the situation and go, okay, this guy on his phone doesn't see the delivery truck stopped in his lane. So he's going to look up at the last minute, swerve out, swerve into the other lane, almost hit the other guy on the bike, try to avoid that, hit a fire hydrant, boom. And so he calls this entire sequence of events before it happens, because what this pill does, in order to make you more intelligent, the process in doing so is simply opening up your conscious use of your brain to what is normally reserved to the subconscious. People talk about this all the time in consciousness discussions, where they talk about your brain is constantly taking in information, whether it be sensory from your 5 senses, or even information that isn't necessarily sensory, like vibrations and just different, you talk about people giving off certain forms of energy and things like that. Like, we don't know. We don't fucking know. But your brain is constantly picking up on so many things on a day-to-day basis that you are not consciously aware of. And really, one of the main functions of sleep is your brain kind of like emptying the trash, to put it metaphorically, like in computer terms. Like your brain is just downloading all this information all day of all this stuff. And then at the end of the day, it kind of sorts through and just goes, okay, we obviously can't store all of this forever. So what of this can we just kind of dump? So your brain is just kind of going through this process of like filtering what information is going to be saved into your hard drive as like accessible memories, like anything that happened that was noteworthy that you can recall. And then other things like, oh yeah, when you were at the gym and there was a guy on the treadmill in a blue shirt, you don't even know you saw that. You didn't even consciously notice that. You did see it. It was in your plane of vision. That information goes somewhere, right? You know, who's the observer? Your consciousness is the observer, but that light still went into your retina, got turned upside down, and I'm about to into your brain, and it went there. And on some level, because your consciousness wasn't tuned into it, it just sits in your subconscious as something you saw. That's why a lot of times you could be doing something and you might not even notice something in the corner of your eye until something irregular about it starts to happen. So you're used to kind of what a human being looks like when they walk, when they're doing whatever. So you could be looking in a certain direction and there's a person walking in your peripheral vision you might not even consciously be aware of you're seeing them, until maybe if they start to pick up the pace a little bit in a way that's not normal, or if they kind of have a different type of gait than you're used to, then all of these things could trigger your conscious awareness to the thing. The point being is that your subconscious is downloading all this information. Your conscious is only tuned into a small portion of that information. And therefore, you are only consciously able to kind of assess the world you live in to a very small degree relative to how much information you actually have inside your subconscious. And so this movie with the Limitless Pill insinuates that if you were to have actual conscious recall or access to your subconscious storage of data points and information inputs, that you could much more effectively just kind of call things how they're going to go. Because it's like, okay, it's not hard if I said, okay, if this guy is about to punch this guy in the face, it's not hard to then go, well, I bet what's going to happen after that is the guy's going to get mad and hit him back. That's a very easy, you're not seeing into the future. If you can see that somebody's about to punch somebody in the face, it doesn't take a psychic ability to then call out the next events step by step in the most sensible fashion. The difference is, with our very limited conscious perception of reality, we only have access, conscious access, to a very small portion of all those data points. So when it's something as obvious as that, we can call out what's going to happen next, and it doesn't seem like we're seeing the future in any way. But what if your brain was tuned in to 10 times, 100 times more of those data points at any given moment? Then you could actually call out a sequence of events or predict a sequence of events for much larger scale things much more accurately, simply by being aware of what's going on at this moment. And that's where I see the value of dreams coming in. Dreams are you watching your subconscious. And your dreams are kind of a gateway into what's really going on inside. What's really happening around you in maybe a way that you haven't consciously considered. And so maybe even in that vein, with your subconscious having access to so much more sensory information and energy and things like that, your subconscious may actually be able to, quote unquote, predict the next phases or stages of your life or the next sequence of events based off of the things that it has perceived that you have consciously not perceived and therefore are unaware of this obvious next stage. And in that way, I do think there is weight to the idea that dreams really can be, in some ways, predictory of coming events in your life. I do believe that. But I say all that to say I woke up this morning with this immense feeling of loneliness. And that loneliness, when I woke up and now that feeling was kind of brought to the forefront, now that I'm awake and I'm consciously feeling this and knowing that I'm feeling this because of this dream I just had, I started thinking about, what was causing me to feel, this isolation from people. And I started thinking, damn, I guess I never really thought about it. But I am going through one of the grandest phases of loss and kind of like change that I've experienced in my life. Not to sound dramatic, not to make what is going on in my life or worse than what is going on in maybe anybody else's life, but in terms of my experience, just going through the fact that my first majorly impactful death was 2 years ago with my papu, my grandfather. My Uncle Bill passes basically a year to the day later, funeral on the same day, viewing on Halloween night 2022 and 2023. Two very close inner circle family members of mine just right there. The phase of the band is different now that John has moved to Nashville, and it's just an entirely different complexion in what I'm doing in life. What I was doing is no longer applicable to where I am now. The podcast is, unavoidably, it's different. It's a different situation now. Obviously, the relationship ending, my brother moving out. All my friends, I heard somebody talk about this thing called a friendship recession. And I had never really, it's always nice when somebody says something. I'm going to turn this heater off real quick. It's always nice when somebody else notices something because it validates the thought that you have that maybe you didn't think was valid because you've never heard anyone else express it. That's such a thing. That's why words are important. Because a lot of times, people always ask that question, like, what do animals think when they think? Like, when I think in words, or so I think, like, if I'm hungry, am I literally thinking the words I'm hungry? Maybe I'm thinking those words. I don't know. The point is, the fact that words exist for these feelings, legitimize these feelings and thoughts. There's a word called sonder. And I believe, I'm going to make sure of this before I say this, but I believe, yes, sonder is the feeling one has on realizing that every other individual they see has a life as full and real as their own. I wish I just said my own definition because dictionary.com's definition sucks. All it is just looking around you and realizing that, like, that guy you see is just as much of a individual as you are, seeing themselves as kind of the main character of the universe too, with their friends and their family holding just as much of a place in their life as, and it's obvious, But, as I've mentioned before, I don't know about on the daily things, but on the podcast, certainly several times, it is kind of easy to fall into the trap of assuming that you are the center of the universe when you've only ever lived through your eyes. And so the fact that there's a word for this realization validates that realization. You've now put a nice bow on it. I've always thought it was odd that we in English don't necessarily have a word for secondhand embarrassment. We kind of do now. We call it cringe. But that's more of a slang term than cringe is a word, but now it's used to describe secondhand embarrassment. But otherwise, secondhand embarrassment is the most technical term we have in the English language for this emotion that we all feel. Embarrassment for oneself is different than embarrassment for someone else. It's a similar emotion, but it's different. And I think it's interesting when such a prominent common emotion could exist that just isn't accounted for in a particular language. But anyway, yeah, sorry, I lost my train of thought for a second. When somebody calls out an idea, it's much the same way. You might be thinking something. I've been thinking for a while that it just seems like I have less and less and less of a social life. It just seems like my friends are more and more unavailable. And getting together with everyone is an increasingly rarer occasion. And I think probably all of that has to do, at least in my case, has to do with just the side effects of getting older, people start having kids, they're married, they're buying homes, they're doing all these things, and it's just not the same. And, you see your parents, they only see their friends once every so often, they're my parents' closest friends. They may only see once every month or two. Their closest friends. So I think that maybe in my case, I'm just experiencing the growing pains of becoming a man in his early 30s. But apparently this is a thing for a lot of people. Again, I don't know if the reason that it applies to other people is necessarily the case for me, but there has been a seemingly notable drop in people's social lives. That I guess you could account for that for a myriad of different reasons. You could say it, I think, obviously, technology and things like that have kind of undermined the need for actual real engagement with human beings. Also, I think that COVID forever changed how we live. I think that we just got used to doing less out of the house. Like, it became so much more normal for bars to just close at like 10 p.m. as opposed to all of them used to stay open until last call. Diners used to be all 24/7. Now they're like, they close at like regular restaurant hours. That all happened during COVID. And that's just a business example. I walk around and I just see less people going out. There used to be lines out the door for these places in Fells Point. I was having a conversation with this over the weekend when I was playing down there. And there still are lines out the door at certain places, but it just feels like there's less people doing shit. And that could also be the economy too. I don't know. But anyway, I digress. From what, you ask? the show. That was an immensely long intro. I said all that to say that we have a couple topics I wanted to get to. First and foremost, I just want to attribute my experience of positivity shortly after waking up, despite all of the sob story I just told you about how sad and lonely I am. To one of my new favorite people, and I'm not saying this ironically, one of my genuinely new favorite people on the internet, and that is Davis Clark. Now, some of you recognize that name, probably most of you don't. But Davis Clark is this dude who I just caught wind of like a week or two ago. He just very recently started kind of blowing up. He's like a college age, like finance student kid, I guess, up in Boston area. And he just kind of posts these like, I guess, David Goggins-esque type of content where he just kind of like takes a selfie of himself and just like, we're going to do this shit today. Let's get it. Like that kind of guy, like a motivational guy. But the thing about him is he looks like such a caricature and acts like such a caricature of like these kind of like typical finance bro and like motivational dudes. Like it's insane that I along with a lot of people actually thought that this was like a joke. Like this was an extremely well done, super meta character that he's playing, that he's doing so well that it walks this uncanny valley of, is this guy real? Like, is this guy really doing this? Or is this guy just the best method actor of all time? And when I first came across his page, I thought he was playing a character. And as I've come across him more and more often, I've realized he's not. This guy is legit. He is real. And it almost made me question, it maybe take a step back, like kind of look in at myself. And I'm not alone in assuming that this was a character. It made me kind of take a look at myself and go, damn, why is it that you automatically assume that this like super overly positive, ambitious dude who like was documenting his daily whatevers was a parody account? And part of that could be attributed to maybe I am slightly jaded, but I think overall internet culture has made us slightly jaded. I've noticed this several times, just in like back and forths on Twitter, that like if you engage in a sort of like any level of debate, not like a Twitter beef, just kind of like very recently, some woman posted under a thing that was saying like, I'm here to tell you that women can be stronger than men, blah, 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 blah. It's just societal, whatever. And I replied, not in a confrontational way at all, but I just said, like, not sure if you're saying that some women can be stronger than some men, which is obviously true, or that, like, on average, women are just as strong as men, and the only reason we don't see that manifest itself is because of like societal, like social constructs. Like the only reason girls aren't as strong as guys in general is because they're not taught to be, that they're supposed to be as strong, which is a commonly held belief among certain radical groups of people. But anyway, I just wagered that question. And this woman replied and said, real men ask to like elaborate on my point while fake men get emotional and argue it. And I initially interpreted that as her calling me like a bitch. But what I realized was that she was actually saying like, hey, good point. This is what I meant. And the fact that you approached this conversation like intellectually as opposed to just be like, men are so much stronger than fucking women. It's not even fucking close, you dumb bitch. Like the fact that I didn't say that, she was like, I don't know, she respected that, I guess. But I was so in the mode of just being used to this being the standard dynamic of conversation on the internet that my mind didn't even have room in it for this woman replying to me nicely in a disagreement. I guess what would be technically a disagreement, which I later found, yeah, I think she really did just mean like some women can be stronger than some men, which is an obvious point. I don't think anybody's going to sit here and debate that there's no woman on the planet that's stronger than any single man. Like, obviously, that's not the case. There are girls that go to my gym right now that I'm fairly certain could bench press more than some of my guy friends, which is pathetic for them, but it's true. But just that that's the culture on the internet. There's this level of anonymity to our interactions online that make everything about owning someone, ratioing someone, getting the top comment by making fun of them the most funnily or whatever. That is so not anything like real world culture. Like, yeah, people are assholes in real life, but not like on the internet. You know? Like, for somebody to just like come up to you and just like blatantly just like fry the shit out of you to a group like this, the equivalent of like a top comment in real life would be like if you see somebody at the bar whose eyes are like slightly too far apart and you walk up to your friends and be like, this motherfucker look like look like he got a staple his eyes together. Something, I don't know, fucking know. And then everybody around is like, hell yeah. That's all the likes and laughing face reacts. That doesn't really happen in real life unless like there's some form of like altercation going on. Or like it's your really close friend and you're close enough to like roast each other like that. But on the internet, that's just the common course of communication, of interaction. So it is rather kind of novel to see someone just be so unabashedly positive and just honest about who they are that I don't think the internet was ready for it. You know, I clearly I'm not doing this segment to cast any negative aspersions on this guy. So when I say this, I don't mean this in an insulting way. But I'll play some clips, you know, just to give some context here, because I think I've done this for way too long without doing that. This is the first thing I ever saw from him. So this is just a short clip.
Because it's time to absolutely hammer some Excel spreadsheets. Locked in for greatness today because it's time to absolutely hammer some Excel spreadsheets.
So that's the first thing I ever saw. And my brother sent me that, and it was like, this is Jimmy every morning with like gambling. And I was like, okay, cool. That's funny. And I just figured it was like when I saw that, I just figured like, okay, he's got the face down pat. You know, like he's got like the trust fund face locked in for greatness today. And I'm just ready to absolutely hammer some Excel sheets. I'm not making fun of him. That's just how I perceived it. I figured this guy is playing a character. Although I completely related because I do get locked in on some days, ready to absolutely hammer Excel sheets. Then I came across this video.
Come after me because I'm a man and I can handle it. When you make fun of how I look, how I act, and how I speak. This is America, baby. Let's go.
I saw that this morning. And I something about the fact that he said, "This is America, baby. Let's go." I like loved that. Come after me because I'm a man and I can handle it. That was Coach Mike Gundy, I believe, football coach for like Oklahoma State or something. I looked up that earlier. And then he just adds a little, you know, make fun of me of how I look, how I act, and how I speak. And then he just goes, "This is America, baby. Let's go." And at that point, you're speaking my fucking language, baby. Sometimes you can just say, "This is America." And it doesn't matter what you're referring to. Just the fact that this is America gets me fucking amped. Like in The Departed, when that one guy says, "This is America. If you're not making money, you're a fucking douchebag." I love that. You are a douchebag. I am a douchebag. If I'm not making money, this is fucking America. Turns out I'm a douchebag. But something about that I just loved. But it also tuned me into like, oh yeah, he is getting made fun of because I'm seeing all these comments and some of them are fucking hilarious. I'm not even gonna lie. Like some of them are fucking hilarious. Like there's all kinds of different things people say in this shit. They'll be like, bad day to be a spreadsheet or something like that. Like just like way funnier versions of that. I saw one guy call him Sonic the Hedge Fund. Oh my God. That literally made me scream laughing this morning. And I can't remember the last time I legitimately screamed laughing from a internet comment. It's gotta have been years. I've chuckled, I've smiled, I've laughed hard, but I've never gone like, ha! Like I was on one when I saw that. But that's when I realized this guy's for fucking real. Like he's getting mad hate. And he's just, and then I saw this. This is what really did it for me. This is when I realized, like, oh, wow, this guy is just kind of like a.
It's the Bruins game. What are you thinking, Joe? Go Bruins! I got to pick it up a little bit, but so far so good. Momentum's swinging a little bit our way. Let's go. After a horrible first period. Yo, that's what we need. Put those goals in the net. Let's go. Jeb, what are you thinking?
Let's go. I'm not even a Bruins fan, but I'm hyped up. Time to get the W.
Yo, Jeb on that Citizens Bank squad, getting it done. Let's go. Yo, the #1 sports fan in Boston.
This guy, first of all, this Asian guy kind of does that thing where like he doesn't want to look at the camera. I've noticed. I don't know if this is an Asian thing, or I'm not trying to be insulting. Or I obviously know it's an autistic thing when you avoid eye contact. I sometimes do that too. I think eye contact is weird. I have issues with that myself. But it's been like I've noticed it, especially with like Asian people that I've talked to, where they kind of do this like look off to a side of you sometimes when they talk. I don't know what that is. I don't know if that's a cultural thing or what, but he's doing that. And then he's got the other guy, his other friend, and they're just so obviously just like kind of just like they're nerds. And I don't mean that in a bad way. They're just legitimately nerds in like a good way. Like I would like to hang out with these guys. I would not mind hanging out with these guys. You know? I have friends like this. And when I saw them in this light, I realized This guy is for real, baby. He's just, I don't want to say he doesn't give a fuck, because he does, but that's what almost makes it more honorable. Because fearlessness is not a virtue. Bravery is. And bravery is having fear and doing it anyway. Going through with something you're not scared to do is not brave. That's just obvious. It's not a virtue. And this guy is getting made fun of left and right and just says, love it.
I'd like to take this chance to apologize to absolutely nobody for breaking the internet. Instead, I'd like to thank everyone who's supporting me so we can spread positivity. The world needs more of it. Let's go.
And let me tell you something. I know this sounds stupid, but when I saw that video after kind of feeling like I genuinely understood this guy, I got a little emotional when he said that. I got a little emotional. The world does need more positivity. And I know that sounds cliche, but it's becoming more and more apparent to me that a guy like this is so incredibly rare because we don't exist in a culture of positivity. We exist in a social media culture of presenting yourself to be the cool guy. This guy doesn't give a fuck about looking like the cool guy. This guy doesn't give a fuck that he and his friends are nerds. He's going to tell you he's getting up today. He's absolutely fucking locked in, and you should be too. He's going to tell you he's staying in on Friday night. He's going to tell you he can't wait to get back to work on fucking Monday. And if you don't want to go back to work on Monday, if you hate your 9 to 5, you're behind the 8 ball. This guy makes working hard cool. And it's a totally different angle on that than like the alpha, Andrew Tate angle, which is, I genuinely believe is necessary in some way as well. I think all these characters do need to exist. I disagree with a lot of what Andrew Tate says. But I think that there are people who can benefit from listening to what he has to say and then sorting out for themselves what they want to take away from it. But yeah, I just found this to be refreshing, I should say. Refreshing. And so shouts out Davis Clarke. That's DAVIS Clarke, CLARKE. Follow him on Instagram, dude. He does a podcast with his brother. They don't even use microphones. They're sitting at a fucking ping pong table in a basement or like a community room at their college, maybe. I don't know. And it's just remarkable for two things. Maybe even more than that. We'll see. The first thing being how quickly something like this can happen to you. How quickly you can go from completely unknown to, in his words, rightfully so, breaking the internet. How quickly someone can just come across your feed. You see him once, and then like maybe a few days later you see another thing, and then you start thinking, who the hell is this guy? I've seen him like twice or 3 times this week. And then once you've crossed people's paths a handful of times, now you're someone they need to know. And then on next thing you know, he's 400,000 fucking followers. Of probably mostly all people that thought he was a complete joke. Literally a joke. Like literally this person was a joke character. And that's why probably a lot of these people followed him. But they stayed because they realized it's not a joke. I'm getting emotional right now talking about it. Something about this situation is powerful to me. The fact that so many people gravitated to him I think, out of a place of negativity and stayed because there was a level of positivity in what he was doing that you just don't see every day. So yeah, man, shouts out. I'm fucking locked in, baby. We are moving slow on this show, aren't we? Whatever. I'm going to get to all these things I've decided. I actually kind of thought about announcing like the various topics at the beginning of the show, just so you guys would have some idea of what was going to be addressed today. But also, I try my best to put that in the description as well. So, it's not as big of a deal. I will make a point of doing that from here on out, though, assuming I don't get, swept away on some fucking dream interpretation conversation for 30 straight minutes before getting to anything I plan on talking about. That seems to be a hump of mine I'll need to get over, or maybe not. I don't mind it. The political things I wanted to discuss, I don't really have too much to say about them. I just wanted you to be aware of them. So first and foremost, you guys have probably seen this if you follow the news at all, that the U.S. Supreme Court, the United States Supreme Court, rules unanimously 9-0 that Trump will stay on the Colorado ballot. The Colorado Supreme Court upheld a motion to remove him from the ballot. I believe this was in terms of the general election. It may have been for the primary election because I don't think the Colorado's held their primary yet. But if they were going to not hold him for the primary election, they certainly weren't going to do it for the general election. And I'm pretty sure this was in terms of the general election, but that doesn't really affect the story that much. And there's people that know more about this situation that could give you more of the details about that. But in terms of what you're going to get out of me here is just the fact that every now and then I am pleasantly surprised. This has been a day of pleasant surprises. I'll say that. I am pleasantly surprised that our system still somewhat works. It almost reinstills a bit of faith that this country, that there's still something to it. One of the biggest moments I can recall when I felt that was when Trump won in 2016, because I legitimately did not believe that they would allow him to win. I was so certain that whatever had to be done to make Hillary Clinton president was going to be done. I had never had faith in our electoral system prior to that election. I had never voted prior to that election. And when he actually won, it made me realize, holy shit, our system actually will allow someone to win that they don't want to win. Now, maybe that was the last time that was the case, because maybe they learned the hard way that, oh shit, we can't be holding fair elections anymore because apparently this motherfucker can win. I don't know. So my faith has been stymied in that department in the years since. But the fact that the Supreme Court unanimously upheld or overturned, really, not even upheld, they overturned the state Supreme Court of Colorado's decision to remove him from the ballot. And these are justices, I should say, on our U.S. Supreme Court that, I think we have a conservative majority, but we have a very powerful liberal minority. Sotomayor, Ketanji Brown Jackson, can't remember the other person But I think there's like 3 or 4, I think there's like 3 hardline liberal justices, and then maybe 3 hardline, 3 or 4 hardline conservatives, maybe you could say. No, I would say 1 or 2 hardline conservatives. And then the rest are in the middle. I think, like I said, it's a slight conservative majority, but the fact that all of them said Trump should be on the ballot, it means that the court still does its job somewhat. It means that it's not completely a political arm of the government, because the court was never supposed to be a political arm. A lot of people want to do things like pack the courts or, expand the amount of justices and whatever, so that they can simply use the Supreme Court as a second branch of the legislature. The Supreme Court's job is not to make laws. That's the legislature's job. And the executive, but primarily the legislative branch, the Congress, Senate, House of Representatives. They make bills, they draft these bills, the executive approves them. If the president being the executive branch approves them, and if not, if he vetoes a bill passed by Congress, if that bill goes back to Congress and they vote it with 2/3 or something majority, then that overrides his veto, the president. The only thing that can stop at that point a legislative law or a presidential law is the Supreme Court, whose sole job is not to make laws, but rather determine whether or not these laws are legal, if that makes any sense. Are they constitutional? Can this law exist? Does this violate some rights that people may have? And that's their job. So, whereas Congress would likely have voted straight down party lines to some degree if this issue was put into Congress, should Trump be on the ballot, I'm fairly certain that virtually every Republican would have said yes, and every Democrat would have said no. Almost all of them. Maybe Joe Manchin would have. Maybe there's a couple ones I'm not giving credit to, but I would say that the vote would have been pretty much down party lines. Why? Because that's a political branch of the government. They are expected to do that. The reason why they aren't given the power to make those decisions is exactly because they're a political branch of the government. So the Supreme Court, although many of those justices in that court despise Donald Trump, do not want to see him become president, they are bound to their duty, which is to simply uphold the constitutionality of a decision. And they unanimously agree that it is unconstitutional and blatantly violates the rights of the American people on a national scale if any individual state eliminates a candidate from their ballot without grounds for doing so. And the grounds for doing so are laid out in the 14th Amendment, which is what contains the Insurrection Act, I believe, or whatever. And I think now that I'm talking about it, I think it's pretty obvious why the January 6th happenings were immediately cast as an insurrection. I mean, not even an hour went by before this is what we were calling it. You know, we saw how coronavirus took 6 months to become COVID, but that what went down on January 6, 2021 was immediately characterized as an insurrection. Immediately. And I think that was done for a reason, because I think that from that point, once they immediately branded this event as an insurrection that Donald Trump was responsible for, they could then use that down the line as legal grounds to invoke the Insurrection Act. Make no mistake, if the Insurrection Act was called something else, let's say it was called the Bologna Sandwich Act, then you can bet that we would be referring to January 6th as the January 6th bologna sandwich. Because they had their eyes on that prize from the jump. However, really nothing has been done in the way of actually proving Donald Trump guilty of any such insurrection or invoking one or anything of that sort. So there is no constitutional ground for him to actually be ineligible. And that's just the reality that even the more that the justices, regardless of their bias, had to acknowledge. There simply was no getting around that. That you can talk about it on CNN all day, you can talk about it on the news, you can talk about it among your friends, but in reality, factually, there is no grounds to declare Donald Trump guilty of an insurrection. That's what the Supreme Court says. That's what even the most liberal of Supreme Court justices have determined. It has not met the criteria, and it probably never will, unless something shady goes down, because it wasn't a fucking insurrection. In any case, the point being is that, states' rights, whatever, but these are for national elections. Now, a state can determine within itself if they want to render candidates for, I guess, state positions or local positions ineligible, because those positions only affect the state. Maybe you don't have to invoke the 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution in Colorado for the governorship, because the governor of Colorado is responsible for the state of Colorado and no one else. A representative for some congressional district in Denver, doesn't necessarily have protections under the U.S. Constitution from his state government. I mean, he does. We all have, constitutional rights, but you know what I'm saying. But when it comes to national elections, candidates running for federal office, then you kind of obviously cannot eliminate from contention a candidate from an entire state whose electoral votes will go towards determining the leader for the entire country. Now, I don't even know how this exactly would have worked in effect, because being removed from the ballot does not mean being removed from contention necessarily. You can still be written in. As we discussed before, Joe Biden was not on the New Hampshire ballot or any primary ballot of this primary cycle until South Carolina. And there were a couple primaries held before that: Iowa, New Hampshire, Nevada, I believe. Maybe not Nevada, but he still won as a write-in. Won. Like, he wasn't running against anybody. But he still got votes as a write-in is the point. So I guess in theory, Donald Trump could still have been written in Colorado. And I'm sure every single person that was planning on voting for Trump would have done that. Maybe even more. Because the fact that he wouldn't have been included on the ballot would have probably motivated a lot of people who weren't necessarily Trump supporters but saw how obviously bullshit this was to go out and say, fuck it, I'm going to fucking write this guy in. You're not going to tell me who I can and can't vote for. If I don't want to vote for him, that should be my decision, not yours. There's a lot of people that I think would have probably, if anything, I mean, this was just a bad move on Colorado's part, because everyone in Colorado has got to be thinking, like, what the fuck are you doing? Any Republican in Colorado is like, any independent in Colorado that isn't completely, I mean, that is an actual independent, let's say. Like a actual independent. Not like a completely liberal person who just refuses to identify themselves as a Democrat because they want to sound, you know, more heady than that. But like a real independent who's actually on the fence and like actually that, I think something like this would have motivated them to vote Republican. But the best point I heard about this issue is that if the precedent was set the other way, like if the Supreme Court in their decision determined that states could do this, you're not talking about 50 individual states needing to remove him from the ballot in order to affect the election. You're talking about really 3 or 4 swing states. You're talking about Pennsylvania, Ohio. I'm blanking on swing states. Florida used to be one, but they're pretty solidly red now. Is Nevada one maybe? Is Arizona one? I don't know. But states like that like all it take, like Michigan, I guess is one. Like those are really the 4 or 5 states that determine the election because it's not based off popular vote. Remember, this is in the presidential election. It is an electoral college. Winner takes all in the state. If you win Maryland by 51-49, if you win Maryland by 1 vote, you know, 1,000,001 to 1,000,000. If Joe Biden wins Maryland, he gets all 10 or whatever of our electoral votes. There's no apportionment like they do in the primaries where like, well, Nikki Haley will get 3 delegates and Trump will get the remainder because they split it 60-40 or 75-20. That's not how it works in the electoral college, as we all know. Just kind of reiterating that just to make sure that my point is making sense here. Where if you have certain states, there's only a handful of states that reasonably could go one way or the other. California hasn't gone red since the 80s. It used to be a reliably red state, I hear. But now it's a pretty far gone blue state. That's just the way it is. You know, Alabama ain't going blue. Texas apparently could go either way, but they're pretty reliably red, I think, maybe. I'm pretty sure they are. You know, but like all the rural-ish southern states, they're reliably red. And then you have states like Maryland, which we're just fucking blue. Like, that's just the way it is. New York, all those northern states, all the, you know, states with major cities that make up like a vast majority of the population, they're reliably blue. So there's only a handful of states that you would need to affect the actual outcome. And in those states, where obviously they are purple states and there's enough power in both branches of government for them to reasonably make a move towards, you know, removing him from the ballot. If you could do that in a state like Pennsylvania, I mean, I don't know exactly how many votes that would mean he gets less. It's hard for me to imagine somebody going out to vote with the intention of voting for Trump, but then just not doing that because he's not on the ballot. However, now that I'm thinking about it, it is fairly easy for me to imagine that some people might not understand the concept of a write-in or feel like it actually is a thing. And so if they just don't see Trump on the ballot in their state, you know, I don't know the exact number, but, you know, if you look at the numbers from the 2020 election and how many it took to swing a state one way or the other, it's not that many. So if you can get like a couple thousand people out of a state of a couple million, like if you can get like 1% of people, less than that, like, okay, take a state of 10 million people. Let's take a state like Pennsylvania. I don't know how many people they have. Let's see, Pennsylvania. Don't you just love live math? Pennsylvania population. All right, 13 million. So 13 million. What's 13,000 out of 13 million? That's 1,000th. That's not even 1%. That's 0.1%. So now, obviously, not all 13 million people are going to go and vote. Let's say half of them are adults, and of the adults, only half of them vote. So let's say, half. Let's call it 3 million. That's fair, right? Can we say there's 3 million voters in Pennsylvania, just as an easy number? 3 million voters. Of those, if let's say 50% of them were going to vote for Trump, that's 1.5 million. This math is getting tedious, isn't it? I mean, it's easy to follow, but I wasn't planning on getting this annoying about it. 1.5 million potential Trump voters, or likely Trump voters, in the state of Pennsylvania. 1% of that would be 15,000 people. These elections can be decided sometimes by less than 1,000, sometimes less than that. There's been elections that have been decided by in the ones, maybe even just one vote. I mean, I don't know how often that is, but it's not like all these elections are won by millions of votes. So we're talking small margins in a lot of these swing states, especially. Obviously, that's why they're swing states. So if 1% of the 1.5 million likely Trump voters in a state like Pennsylvania do not write Trump in, either because they don't understand it or they just I don't know, for whatever reason, it could be any reason. 1%, that's 1 in every 100 people. That's a difference of 15,000 votes. That's not nothing. If 1 in every 1,000 likely Trump voters in a state like Pennsylvania, just 1 in every 1,000, 0.1%, did not submit a vote. So every group of 1,000 people, 999 of them just write Trump's name in, but one guy who was planning on voting for Trump didn't understand the assignment and fucked it up and didn't write him in or ignored the question or missed it or whatever. All it needs is a 0.1% error rate here. If one guy out of every 1,000 guys, 999 guys did it, one guy fucked it up. That's 1,500 votes. That's 1 in 1,000. If 99 guys out of 100 nail it, but one guy doesn't, that's 15,000 votes. That is enough to sway an election. And so if the precedent gets set that states can remove candidates from ballots without constitutional grounding from federal elections, that only needs to be implemented in a handful of states. And once it is, it can have a tremendous effect on national elections. They might only need to turn one state, and that one state might come down to a couple thousand votes. So there's a game plan here. Obviously, like I said, I'm just impressed that was kind of snuffed out. That's wild to me. I'm impressed. I'm impressed, America. Give it up for yourselves. One more political thing. Trying to move through these quick. Running late here. No, I'm not. There's no time. Fuck. I can do this whatever I want. I try to get these out by 6:30. What is it? Fucking 4:50. I'm good. Last political thing. Poll came out from the New York Times, I believe. Siena poll or whatever. What's his name? Nate Silver, I think, is the guy. For the general election, like a Trump-Biden poll. And the results are... I wasn't expecting this necessarily. I mean, it's kind of... I don't want to say shocking, because this is kind of what I imagined, but it is shocking, I guess, that these numbers are actually starting to appear. The numbers in my head that I'm assuming are real are becoming real. Like, So this poll, first and foremost, Trump versus Biden, Trump 48%, Biden 43%. And then obviously that would be, 9% undecided or whatever. So 48-43, Trump's up on Biden by 5 points. That's significant. More importantly, what they call the crosstabs, which are breakdowns by demographic. This is one of those things that surprised me, but not really. Because I kind of knew this a little bit, but when you actually see it in numbers, it's like, whoa. Latinos, Trump wins outright. Trump beats Biden with Latinos 46% to 40%. Now, if you didn't study numbers, if you didn't pay attention to that shit, you would believe that there's not a single Latino in America who supports Trump. Now, if you live in Miami, where there's an immense Cuban population, aka people who just escaped in very recently within their family history, a communist dictatorship, and saw the effects of real socialism, they fuck with Trump hard. I had this Cuban waiter down in Miami, I think, Miami Beach or something like that, and this guy just was going off about Trump to me. I was like, hell yeah, brother. Cheers. I'm gonna fucking get some shots with this guy. Oh man, let me tell you something, man. With Cubans, we don't fuck with socialism. Say hello to my little friend. They all say that. So I knew that at least Cubans didn't fuck with him. I mean, with Biden. But, I mean, like I said, there is an immense disparity between what we are told and the reality. And the reality is a very large contingent. In fact, statistically, a majority contingent of Latino Americans in this country who vote support Trump over Biden at the current moment. And you would never, ever believe that unless you read this poll or listen to anything. If you exclusively consume left-wing corporate media, this is not a defense for right-wing corporate media, but I'm just saying in the context of this point, if you exclusively consume left-wing corporate media, which outside of the news is entirely left-wing, like yes, there's conservative corporate news in Fox News, but outside of that, everything that is corporate media, aka what you see on network television, that is almost 100% left-wing. So late night comedy, talk shows, Saturday Night Live, all the messagery that you see in televised sports, the award shows, all of those things are inarguably, undebatably, unabashedly left-leaning. And so if that is what you consume, among other things, you would have no idea. You would think it's the most outlandish thing in the world to say that Latinos support Trump. Like, objectively, Latinos support Trump. Based off this poll. Now, there are margins for error. I don't know how many people were sampled in this poll. It was published by the New York Times. And not only was it published by the New York Times, I'm assuming this has something to do with them too. I don't know if Nate still works with them. I don't know the inner workings, but not only did New York Times publish this / conduct it indirectly or somehow, but it also goes against, I think, what is New York Times' obvious political leaning, which is Democrat. So it's not like they're publishing a potentially flawed poll that benefits their position, because then you'd be like, wait, I mean, how reliable is this poll? Are you just publishing it because it helps your case? They're publishing a poll that hurts their case. So you got to imagine if they're going to go as far as to do that, this is a reliable poll. So I'm imagining whatever margins of error exist in this poll are the standard margin of error that exists in any poll. So yes, Trump beating Biden 48-43 overall. Trump beating Biden among Latinos outright 46-40. And then the other big number here is in the black population. Trump has 23% of black support. Biden only has 66. I say only. Biden's obviously winning in the black vote, but that's like standard historically for a Democrat candidate versus a Republican candidate. 23% for a Republican candidate is high in the black demographic. Democrats kill it in the black demographic. A candidate like Joe Biden having just under 2/3 of the black vote is very low and very telling for a Democratic presidential candidate, especially if you were the vice president under the first black president in American history, Barack Obama, who had obviously immense black support. So, and the thing beyond that is I don't know if they broke it down by gender. I know among women in general, in general, it's split 50-50, Trump Biden, which sounds about right. I think for white people, Trump's up 53-40. So I think white men, I think maybe white women slightly don't prefer Trump. But white men come through to still have us up 53-40 on the liberal white men. But I'm telling you, that Latino number that Trump outright beats Biden among Latinos, that's impressive, but do not sleep on the black vote for Trump. Because that, I think, is the last vestige of the Democrats. If they lose the black vote, they apparently already lost the Latino vote, at least when it comes to Trump and Biden. If the black vote starts to slip, it might be game over. They're gonna have to do something, figure out a whole new game plan. Because I think the black people in this country are rightfully so starting to see that the Democrats don't give a fuck about them any more than the Republicans. Not saying that the Republicans care about them this immense. Both parties are full of shit, but there has been a sort of adherence or loyalty, let's say, to the Democratic Party within the black community because of historical context. And I think the Democrats have kind of just taken that for granted and therefore felt no need to ever do anything for the black community besides pander to them once every election cycle for their vote and convince them that the alternatives are just pure racists that would have you back, in Barack Obama's words, in chains if they could. But I don't think that's working anymore. Clearly, I don't think it's working anymore. I think that, when you look at this number, 66-23, it's basically a 2-to-1 ratio. Well, actually, it's more like, it's closer like 2.5 to 1, 3 to 1 for Biden. But that 23% for Trump is significant. Also, that's just for men and women, black men and women. I believe black women specifically are Biden's strongest supporters. I think they voted for him like 98% in 2020. Black men were more like 80-something%. So black men are a little bit more open to Trump than black women, but so who knows? I mean, I'd be interested to see if black women are voting for Trump at plus 90% still, then in order for Biden to only be at 66% among the black population in general, that means black men are riding pretty fucking hard for Trump. You would have to imagine, right? So I'd be interested to see, in order for them to get it from 90-something among black women to 66% overall, that means that the black male vote has to be coming in hard for Trump, if that makes any sense. So I'm just interested to see that. I'm happy about this because I'm glad that there's no one is just getting votes for what the corporate media is telling you the reason should be. The Democrats are no longer just getting voted in, or it's becoming less and less of a thing that they're just getting votes because they're Democrats. And this is a good thing to watch happen with Republicans too. But Biden isn't just getting votes because he's Joe Biden anymore and he's a Democrat. And Trump isn't just not getting votes because he's Donald Trump and he says all these things and he has 80 million allegations and this thing and that thing and he's a Putin stooge and all these other things they tell you. People are starting to just kind of be like, you know what? I fucking like this guy. I don't fucking like this guy. Or I really don't fucking like this guy. And contrary to popular belief, if I'm going with the lesser of two evils, I'm going with Trump over Biden. Regardless of what you tell me about Trump, that's an interesting phenomenon to watch. Last thing I want to say, just real quick as a side away, I have to get this off my chest. I can't not say it before we get to the Rook looks. This is grounds almost for like a new TikTok challenge. I'm probably not going to be the one to start it, but this is a challenge for white people. White people that are old enough to have been active on Facebook in like the early 2010s, late 2000s. So like, anyone older than that. So like if you were active on Facebook and you were like a regular like grade school age, like let's call it middle school to high school, whatever. And you were active on Facebook during the years like 07 to like 2013, let's say. That's a lot of people. I'd say anybody who's like, obviously older than me, but also probably within 5 years, 6 years younger than me. If you're 6 years younger than me, that means you're 25, which means you were born in 98, which means you would have been like 12 in 2010. So you would have been like, in like prime middle school age during the turn of that decade into the 10s. If you meet those criteria and you're a white person, do me a favor. I did this last night. I went on to Facebook and I typed in, at first I typed in my name and then I typed in N GGA because I was just curious, like, do I have any posts where I said that? I blatantly remembered making posts where I at least did the exclamation point. Didn't used to be a thing. And I'm going to get into that in a little bit, but I typed it in and nothing came up. And I was like, I definitely remember making a status of like, I want to say like 10 years ago where I said like something like that. And it was still like mildly, people forget this, but it was still mildly not really that big of a thing. It was a thing, but it wasn't a big thing. I guess I had deleted it. So then I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm just going to go for gold here. So I go and I type in my last name. You guys hear that? And so I go in to type in Selesky. I'm sorry. I was just dragged into the depths of hell for trying to tell you this story about. I'm back now, as you can see. I made a deal with the devil while I was down there, and he let me come back up. I sold my soul to the devil, and I also threw in. I was like, "Just can you let me say it like once?" And he was like, "Sure. What the hell? You're going to hell anyway." And I said, "Thanks, Dev." And so I'm back, and I'll continue to tell you the story now. So anyway, I go into my search bar and I type in my last name, nigga. And wow, how eye-opening was that? I cannot recommend that every white person listening to this do it now. Because I've done it for a lot of you. Oh, I had to check. I couldn't have been the only one. I had a lot of posts to my white friends, to my black friends. Happy birthday. Just posting hot 16s on people's walls. I would just do that when I was like 19, 18, 17 years old. I would just like, it'd be like 6 p.m. on a Tuesday and be like, I'm hitting this motherfucker with a 16 right now. Just had like rap verses on people's walls. My brother had some. Friends that I know now that are liberal as can be, that couldn't even dream of even imagining ever even coming close to using this word. Oh, they used it. It wasn't a thing in 2011. I've said that before, and I'm simply saying it is amazing. I texted this to my brother. I texted this to my friend. It is amazing how much times have changed in the past 10, 12 years. I mean, these weren't political posts. These weren't racial posts. This was just another word in everyone's vocabulary. And maybe that's specific to where I grew up, but I doubt it. I couldn't believe it. I embarked on this whole thing because I figured I probably said it like once or twice when I was like 13. Oh, no. We loved it. And like I said, I searched all you motherfuckers. Anybody who went to my high school, the real liberal ones. It's like, I wonder, not because I'm trying to cancel you or anything, because, hey, we're all going, what I'm saying is, if we're going down, we're all going down. Now, some of you might listen to this and delete your shit, but before you do, just know, I saw it. And also, think about it for a second. What happened? Now, of course, we could point to things that happened, but it's very, very telling to me how much the culture has shifted around this word particularly, used in this context. Obviously, it was never okay to walk around. Hey, I'm talking about just like, hey, what up? It was in movies. As a joke, some nerdy white guy would say it. It was not what it is now. And I don't think that's progress. I think it's the opposite of progress. I think that racially, socially, this country was more united 15 years ago when we were just throwing it around like hotcakes. Because we understood context back then. We understood when somebody was trying to be hurtful or when somebody was just talking like you talk. And I just think it's interesting to do yourself a favor and go back and see. Because you've forgotten. I had forgotten. I had, once again, always intuitively known that it was less of a thing back then, but I was face to face with real, verifiable evidence that that assumption is more than correct. It was like, as my brother put it, going back into the Twilight Zone, seeing things that I couldn't imagine posting now, not because they're bad, but because people would think they were bad. And not a single person even mentioned it on the, it was like, it would be like statuses with like 50 likes and like people commenting like LOL, not because of the word. They didn't even, the word wasn't a thing in the context of that post. It just happened to be one of the words I chose. To them, back in 2011, the fact that I said a status where I was like, man, blah, blah, that was like somebody commenting and harping on the word the. Yo, you really gotta say the like that, bro. I'm telling you, I don't know how to describe it. Nobody's gonna believe me until you go and see it for yourself. Just fucking do it. It's eye-opening. And you might hate me for saying this, but I think America and the world will be a better place if we could get back to that. I do. People are going to. I could argue that point in more detail at an appropriate time, but I genuinely believe that. I really do. And I think that we've been divided for the personal gain of people that don't give a fuck about you or us, or any of us. And it's just crazy to see how normalized that division has become. It's crazy to see how tense we have become. And it hasn't been for the better. I don't think anybody could sit here in their right mind and argue that it's been for the better. So just think about that. Do some me search. Go look yourself up. This might not apply to all of you, but I think more than you would think for a lot of you. It's pretty funny. Anyway, let's finish out this episode. This has been a long one. I got a few looks for you here. The Rook look. First of all, great weekend. We had the Celtics -9 on Friday against the Mavericks. That covered handily. Celtics won 138-110. So we hit that for a plus 136. We also took the Loyola Chicago money line, which was definitely the ballsiest of the three bets we took versus Dayton, a ranked team. They were 1.5 point dogs. I said, fuck it, let's go money line. And damn if they didn't win. 77-72. Hit for plus 153 after the boost. So that was a good one. And the only one we lost was the Dartmouth plus 19.5 against Yale. They lost 56-80, so they lost by 24. So Dartmouth didn't cover, but the Loyola Chicago money line and Celtics -9 did cover on Friday, which brought us to an overall yield for the day of 1.89 units. Tack that into our running total. We are now currently sitting at 5.35 units overall after 34 bets. That is a total yield, a lifetime yield of 15.74%. We are killing it, believe it or not. We are killing it. Now, I finally did get that leap day bonus bet. I almost wonder if that was done on purpose. Maybe they were like, yeah, you get it a day after, like a leap day. Because it did come not the next day or not after the bet, but the next day. It was like a skipped a day. So maybe that was part of the thing. I didn't read the thing. If that was part of the thing, then I guess that's pretty cool. I mean, whatever. That's pretty cool, DraftKings. I did get it. I threw it on Virginia on Saturday. But we don't run Rook looks over the weekend because we don't have access to the lines in basketball season. So that doesn't count. But I did blow my leap day bonus bet. So, but that's the original 10 that we lost to get that bet was lost on East Carolina on Thursday. So that loss of a unit is already factored into our running total. The bonus bet loss was a freebie. That's not more money lost. That was just a free play. So our running total is accurate. But just in case you haven't checked or used yours yet, go check now if you did apply that leap day bonus because you have it now, I would imagine. So you can go ahead and throw that on whatever. You can soup up one of the bets we already have this evening, which I'm about to divulge, which are as follows. DraftKings clash on the court. Pretty good game tonight. Texas at Baylor. We're coming down to the end of the season here, guys. So it's getting competitive. People are fighting for spots in the March Madness tournament, obviously. More close at hand, the conference tournaments. So good competition these final week or so. I'm going Texas +7 at Baylor. My model is showing about 5.3 point underdogs or whatever. I like Texas +7. I think Texas is a good team. And I think Baylor has somewhat of an injury or questionable or whatever, but regardless, Texas has no injuries and their season averages lead me to believe that a 7-point edge is favorable. Now, I realize as I'm saying this, every time I say that, this bet loses. But whatever, maybe that won't be the case tonight. Maybe we're due. We are hot. I mean, we are 5.35 units up overall. So, can't all be wrong picks here, obviously. So yeah, fuck it. Texas +7 at Baylor tonight. That game's at 9. There's a 50% college basketball boost on MGM. The other big game this evening is Duke at NC State. And I'm going dog again, baby. I'm going NC State +6.5. Duke does have an injury of pretty decent significance. And even without that, my model only has NC State as a 2-point underdog. So use your 50% MGM boost on that. And again, if you want to soup up one of these bets with that leap day bonus, if you still got it, sure, or just throw it on something else, whatever. It's your prerogative. I already lost mine, so I'm not even gonna tell you what to do with it. Also, guys, do not sleep on Fanatics Sportsbook. I just picked up on this, but they have this power hour thing. They have 2 25% boosts every day that I've noticed. I haven't seen a day where they haven't. Now, they're only for $5 max, so it's essentially one $10 boost for 25%, which is fine. I mean, that's what we're getting out of MGM. I mean, that's what my limits are. DraftKings is taken to give me 25 lately, but whatever. I just work it in units for the sake of this thing. But real numbers, DraftKings is giving me 25 for a lot of these bonuses and boosts, and MGM only gives me 10. So Fanatics giving me 2 $5 ones. I just like to soup up one of our bets. So what I'll probably likely do, and what I did do, I'm saying this like I haven't already done this, just take those 2 Fanatics boosts, the 25% boost, assuming you have them and you are a member of Fanatics. If you're not, first of all, I don't know if they're still running it, but in February they were giving out $100 bet match every day for 10 days. So up to $100. So in theory, I think you get $1,000 worth of bonus bets by signing up to Fanatics and taking full advantage of that. Or just, whatever amount you're comfortable betting a day to get matched. But, however, if you had PointsBet in Maryland prior to that, you're not eligible for that sign-up bonus. So I found that out the hard way. But it's still a great bonus to be aware of if that's not the case for you. And Like I said, I mean, they're giving out these 25% boosts pretty much every day. So that doesn't hurt. So I went ahead and threw those on. I souped up the old NC State plus 6.5 bet. But those are our picks today, guys. We're looking good. We are well in the black overall. I love it. I'm sure Joe Biden wishes he could say the same. But the Rook is DraftKings Clash in the Court, 50% boost. Texas plus 7 at Baylor tonight at 9, I believe. And the MGM 50% college basketball boost. Throw that on NC State plus 6.5 versus Duke. Duke. Guys, it's been a long one. I'm not mad about it. Till tomorrow, stay locked in.